Okay, well, I know more people are still joining. We had close to 700 people register for this event. We are so delighted in how much interest there is in hearing the perspectives and experience of people who have experienced homelessness and learning from them. Welcome to our event, Flipping the Script, a homeless teach-in for healthcare workers. We have an amazing event lined up. You're going to hear from some really inspiring and powerful advocates. And I'm just going to run through some logistics very quickly, and then we are going to get started. So first, I just want to acknowledge and thank our co-sponsors for this event. I'm Bonnie Mohan. I'm from the Health and Housing Consortium, and I'm joined by several colleagues that helped pull this event together: the Health by Housing Lab, Greater New York Hospital Association, Prescription Home, Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing, Help NYC, Neighbors Together, the Homeless Hero, New York State Council of Churches, Midtown South Community Council, Vocal, Upper West Side Open Hearts, and Human.nyc. All of their Twitter handles are listed. If you are on Twitter, we would love for you to engage with us. There's going to be kind of a concurrent conversation happening outside of the Zoom on Twitter. So we ask, if you are on Twitter, please tweet along with us with the hashtag #HomelessTeachIn. And you know, we want to make sure that there's lots of opportunities for people to weigh in and hear. I think we can go ahead and close our poll. Just through some quick logistics, if you would like to have subtitles on your for the course of this event, that is enabled. You can show or hide subtitles by selecting the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. And if you go to subtitle settings, you can see here how to adjust the subtitle size or view the full transcript. All attendees are muted and will be for the course of this event. The chat is also disabled. So if you have questions, please enter those into the Q&A function, again, on the bottom of your screen. We will have, towards the end of the event, an evaluation poll that will pop up, and we would really love for you to complete that to give us some feedback on this event. And we also have an open feedback form for you to weigh in, give more comments on how you thought this event was and other events that might be helpful for you. So just to run through quickly our agenda, we'll hear from our moderator, who I'll introduce very shortly. Then we'll hear from our panelists. We have 4 amazing panelists who will provide some remarks. We'll have a brief moderated Q&A where we'll actually hear from select healthcare workers who will ask questions of our panelists. And then we'll open up the Q&A to all of you, to the full audience, as well as pulling some questions from those who are engaging on Twitter. So with that, I'm going to close my screen, and I'm going to introduce our moderator for the day. And let me just find her so I can spotlight Dr. Kelly Doran. And I'm going to add you. So Kelly Doran is an emergency physician at NYU School of Medicine and at Bellevue Hospital, and will be moderating our conversation today. So Dr. Doran, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I wanted to start by thanking our panelists for taking the time to share their knowledge. It's a true privilege to have the opportunity to learn from you. And thank you also to all the attendees today for showing that you care and for bringing your open hearts and open minds to listen and learn. As some of you may know, there are more than 580,000 people who are homeless on any given night in the United States. Homelessness has profound effects on health, yet many healthcare professionals have received very little formal education on homelessness. For example, in medical school, maybe it's part of one lecture or a case baked in with another topic, and it's even less common for that teaching to come from the real experts, people who have experienced homelessness themselves. So today we're flipping the script. We will hear from a panel of 4 people who have experienced homelessness in New York City: Shamaya Morris, Sharmel Lucas, Sarah Wilson, and Shams, also known as the Homeless Hero. They're also all advocates, and they're doing important work to help others. They have wide knowledge of homelessness and its impacts on health. But our audience should also remember that, of course, no single person or small group of people can fully represent the large diversity of experiences that people have with homelessness. Our panelists are all unique individuals with their own stories, and that's where they'll be reflecting from today. We'll get to the Q&A later in the event, but to start, we have asked each panelist to briefly share their insight on how homelessness affects health and the most important things they think healthcare workers should know, including sharing how homelessness has affected their own health or any particularly good or bad experiences they've had with the healthcare system. And we'll start with Shamaya.
Hi, my name is Shamaya. I am an advocate here in New York City. I've been an advocate for 22 years. I've been an organizer, community organizer for the same amount of time. I am a partner at a consulting firm. I have been homeless not only as a child, not only as a single adult, but most importantly as a parent. Being homeless as a parent was probably the most profound experience that I had. When I had to experience living in Staten Island with all of my support system in Queens, my son almost died because we were going back and forth to the hospital and he had a severe kidney issue. And all the hospital kept telling us was, oh, you're homeless. Go back to the shelter, talk to your caseworker, get services from them. We had to go out of the borough we were placed in and lie about our housing situation for them to save my son's life. Going through that experience taught me that the stigma of being homeless had to be erased because otherwise they didn't listen to our concerns. They didn't believe that being homeless, you suffered from medical issues such as starvation, dehydration, mental health issues like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, so on and so forth, things that were tangible and realistic if you had a roof over your head. Not only having myself go through it, but looking at my little children crying, saying, Mommy, I don't feel good. And going to the physicians and saying, help me, help my children, and being turned away and shunned just because I couldn't provide a basic need that should not be an issue at all, not only made me feel less as a human, but it made me feel like I wasn't even a mother. And that's why I'm here today to talk to you. I want people to know people like me exist. Don't ignore us. Don't turn your eyes away. Don't ignore what we're going through because it could be you. I'm somebody's mother. I could have been your mother. You don't know who my children are. You can walk down the block and see them. They don't need to be the face of homelessness, but I will stand in front of you and proudly be that face just so that you know we exist. And it's time to erase the stigma, erase the barriers, change the narrative so that homelessness no longer exists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shamaya. Let's move on to Charmel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charmel Lucas. I've been experiencing homelessness since Hurricane Sandy. After Hurricane Sandy, I became more aware of what was going on with Department of Homeless Services. So I was able to get involved with an organization called Picture the Homeless. Due to COVID, the organization is a little slow right now. I've been doing advocacy with them going on close to 7 years. What I can personally just bring to the table is my stories from other homeless people as far as dealing with, like the young lady prior to me spoke about, is a lot of people go into the shelter system, but their doctors are in Manhattan, but they throw them all the way out in Queens. So those have been a lot of issues. Speaking a little bit about sleeplessness, it's really hard not to know when you're going to have somebody banging on your door and giving you basically 24-hour notice. So you have to pack up. This is what DHS said. So everybody from my experience in the shelter system, really living on eggshells because you're not really sure, you're not certain. They really don't want to tell you what's your next step. They just tell you what the Department of Homeless Services is telling them, and people are just being really shuffled around. So it's a lot of anxiety of the not knowing, the uncertain. And that's what I'm basically bringing to the table today. Yeah.
Thank you, Sharmel.
You're
Let's
welcome.
move on to Sarah. Oh, Sarah, you're muted still.
Oh, well, thank you, sweetie. Okay, so hi, my name is Sarah Wilson. I do advocacy work with the Safety Net Project out of the Urban Justice Center, with the Homeless Can't Stay Home campaign, as well as Vocal New York. Just a little background history. I'm what you call dual diagnosed and working class disabled. I'm on a fixed income, so I needed a fixed rent. Coming into the shelter system, I came in with all paperwork in hand, yet stayed 740 consecutive days and nights, because in New York City, there's no such thing as real affordable housing, unnecessarily. So like the other members have been speaking on, just a brief example, the shelter system from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., rain, snow, sleet, heat, you're in the street. That in itself creates health issues. There's a lot wrong with it, and I know we're going to get into the specifics of purposely, but for myself, I'm also a parent. My family was also affected by this. There's no reason a person should have to stay 2 years in a shelter system when they came in with all their paperwork and it expired repeatedly. I'm looking forward to speaking more on these other issues, and just thank you everyone for having me, and welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. And last, let's turn to Shams.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Shams, also known as the Homeless Hero. Shit. Pardon me, I didn't mean to show the layout to the apartment. You got to give me a quick second. Damn, I'm just giving them the whole view. Pardon me. But let's make sure. In my advocacy, I've been the victim of all types of stuff, including fake plumbers coming to my door, ex-police officers posing as plumbers who entered my apartment illegally and took a picture of me half naked. So for security purposes, I have to be careful. You never know. That's the result of standing up and trying to advocate for myself and other directly impacted people. That is the severity of what could happen, and maybe even worse. But I'm used to dealing with a failed system. I'm used to dealing with the way that the city operates and DHS operates and how they address homelessness. And it's actually worse now than it was in the past for me. I grew up in foster care since the age of 2. I was homeless at the age of 10. By the age of 12, I was brought into the home of my childhood friend, but unfortunately, during the height of the crack epidemic, we got caught up in the streets and it kind of threw my whole thing off. I was an academic star at the same time of being a hip hop pioneer and helped develop hip hop culture. Let me move real quick forwardly. I ended up in a shelter run by Project Renewal, a great organization. And one of the things that I noticed is that the shelter component, although they have a great medical unit, great psychiatrists, and they have a fascinating outpatient unit, which is the recovery center, there was no synergy between all of these 3 units. And that's where my advocacy began long before we moved to the Lucerne Hotel. And I advocated to bring synergy to those units, also to create a different environment in the shelter component, which was more akin to like a drug den. And I didn't, like for the environment just to be warehousing people in a way where they didn't have services and access to services and stuff like that. So we can get into all the little particulars, but just moving fast forward, one of the unique things that I did in cooperation with Project Renewal's Recovery Center and Upper West Side Open Hearts Initiative is we created a unique model at the Lucerne Hotel, which had services on site and engagement with the community that allowed for us to create a more healthy and holistic environment. So, I'm here. I mean, let's go.
Thank you. Thank you, Shams. Thank you, everybody. So we will move on to the Q&A now. We have 3 town hall participants today representing a few of the types of healthcare workers. They're each going to introduce themselves and ask one question of the panel. For the rest of the audience, if you have a question, please use the Q&A function in Zoom. You can go ahead and start putting in your questions. If you're on Twitter, you can add questions using the hashtag #HomelessTeachin. But let's move on with our town hall participants, and we will start with Kadian.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kadian Allen, and I'm a nurse leader at Lincoln Medical Center here in the South Bronx. I'm really excited to be here. I'm honored to be a part of this panel. So this is my question. Sometimes our patients coming into the hospital who are homeless seem especially tired or hungry, which unfortunately sometimes makes the healthcare staff assume that they're just coming because they want a place to sleep or something to eat, even if that's not the case. Can you just please share with me and tell us more about how your access to food or ability to sleep, how it's being impacted by your homelessness, how it affects your health?
I'll start this one because this pretty much goes with what I had started with my introduction. There are a small percentage of homeless people compared to the larger population that do utilize hospital facilities, things like that, for food and shelter from time to time, specifically in the middle of summer with the heat and in the middle of winter with the cold. However, a majority of the homeless population do not do that. This is the blanket they gave my child to sleep with at the shelter that we were placed at in Staten Island. As you can see, it is what you would get from Walgreens as a $10 throw blanket. It is not adequate to provide warmth in the winter for any human, especially an elementary age child. That child almost died. And when I took that child to the hospital, which was later found out to be grade 5 kidney reflux disease, where he needed half of his bladder, his entire right kidney, and an extra urethra removed from his body, the hospital staff told me, oh, he's tired, he's hungry, go back to the shelter, feed him and give him a nap. I had to take him from Staten Island to Brooklyn, to Kings County Hospital, where they gave him CAT scans, MRIs, a test that was known as a VCUG, before they found out that my son was about to die. No parent wants to be told to plan their child's funeral. They specifically do not want to be told that because they are homeless. Nobody wanted to believe my son was suffering from dehydration. They did not want to believe that I was suffering from exhaustion. They did not want to believe that my children had pneumonia. They believed we were homeless and I just wanted attention. ACS was called on me. My children were removed from my home. I was told I couldn't be a parent. The trauma over a decade later still has me paranoid when my kids walk out the door that somebody is going to take them and they're not going to return. Trauma is real. Dehydration is real. Exhaustion is real. If we can believe that our soldiers and our prison inmates and our foster children suffer from these conditions, why can't we believe it about our homeless? Homelessness is not a choice for most people. And those that do choose to be homeless suffer from severe mental health issues that are not being addressed. The homeless population needs to have medical services that are adequately addressing the issues they face. We need the help given to them. Otherwise, it's just going to continue creating a cycle of negativity. I went through that system over and over and over again. I was just thankful enough that with the work that I do, I got into connections with people that said, hey, you need help, let us help you. Most people in the shelter systems, most people that are street homeless, they're not that fortunate. I fully recommend that anybody in a medical setting get training on dealing with the homeless population. If for nothing other than at least a handful of homeless people are going to come through your office, whether you know they're homeless or not, and they're going to need you to have that understanding of their situation. They're going to need you to know, like, these are the signs and symptoms of homelessness. Homelessness should be listed as a medical condition that can be treated.
Thank you, Shemaya. Does anybody else have, others can chime in on the question Kadian asked about sleep?
Sure.
and
Okay, so my name is Sarah again. Thank you. Okay, so homelessness affects every aspect of your life. Even if it's not considered a medical emergency, human beings die without food, water, or sleep, so it should be considered medical. If you're over 3 days without sleep and mixed psychosis, so these are real, actual medical issues. Because the shelter's priority is the physical structure of the building and not the residents inside it, they treat that and us accordingly. So basically, the building is the priority and not the people in it. In 4 out of the 5 buildings I was in for over 2 years, there was absolutely no outside food allowed. So if you were not in that building at 7, 12, and 5, then you did not eat. The only thing, and I use the word eat and food sparingly. We had something we used to call purple circle meat, that was, as they called it, ham, turkey, pastrami, all in one. I don't know what animal that would come from or what that nutritionally would have for you. As a result, my iron went down, my calcium went down, I became anemic, I developed ulcerative colitis, I have emphysema, COPD, and I kept getting pneumonia chronically because from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. you're forced to be in the street, rain, snow, sleet, heat, regardless. So when your body's wet for that amount of hours at a time, you develop secondary conditions. It's not the condition that causes the homelessness, it's the homelessness that causes the conditions. And people have that backwards. Someone once pointed out to me, Maslow's hierarchy of need, that we need food, clothing, shelter, intimate bonds, connections. You cannot thrive without that. And that's basic common sense, but people don't have any training in this. In the shelters, you're not allowed drinks, you're not allowed glass, you're not allowed alcohol, you're not allowed spray. I had pneumonia and I was trying to bring in orange juice, cough drops, and Theraflu, and I was told that that is contraband and was not permitted. I was forced to go in the streets again from 9 to 5 because they don't care and they don't listen. Another building, they would remove the water coolers from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And because you can't bring in your own water, every woman of the 150 in that building had chronic urinary tract and bladder infections from holding their urine in all day long and not being able to drink enough water or empty their bladders. And it's embarrassing when you have 150 women who are going through personal traumas, because I stand wholeheartedly by anyone that goes into a shelter system is coming from trauma. They have PTSD and they don't need to be in a congregate setting. They're both ineffective and inhumane. And you're going to keep racking up medical issues, from ingrown toenails since you can't have nail clippers, to the way you look in the street because you can't use heat on your hair or can't use certain cosmetic products. But when it comes down to the medical issues and trying to seek help, going to a hospital, your red flag immediately. They scan your address before they ask you what's wrong, and they know that you're homeless once you get there. And the treatment is beyond below what it should be, but I'm very optimistic that with this call today, we're going to make a lot of progress. So I'm going to pass it on to someone else, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak on this as well.
Chance.
I just wanted to say something to the doctor. We had my organization a couple of years ago did a Free to Pee campaign, and that's a big thing as far as street homeless, shelter homeless, and even for regular New Yorkers. There's no bathrooms here. So at the end of the day, a lot of people I interview down to, like I said, regular New Yorkers, street homeless, shelter homeless, especially the ones that can't stay inside. There's no bathroom. So people are holding their urine, their feces, now all of these different impurities are just building up in people's bodies. So at the end of the day, I just wanted the doctor to realize, and maybe some of those questions need to be asked to the patients besides their homelessness, are you able to relieve yourself? And that's really what's causing a lot of chronic illness with homeless. Like I said, street, shelter, and even our New Yorkers, there's no bathroom. So that's a lot of reasons why people homeless do go to the hospital to use the bathroom. At the end of the day, I do deliveries. During my homelessness, I'm homeless now as we speak, but even for myself, there is no bathrooms. And it shouldn't make any sense that I got to buy a soda just to urinate the water I bought down the block. And that's all I want to say for right now.
Thank you, Charmel. You're muted.
So I was going to talk about the question that you asked about sleep deprivation, basically, right? Okay.
Yes, that would be great.
So tying that back in, let me say that there's I don't want to say it's even different experiences, but from a health perspective, there's different type of homelessness, from housing insecurity, which might mean, and this is homeless, matter of fact, sleeping on somebody's couch. And, you have to get up at certain times. You have to kind of if you're on the couch or somewhere in the house, you got to kind of tiptoe, and, you don't want anybody looking at you funny and, different things, or sometimes they make noise. One aspect. Streets. My experience sleeping in the streets or the subways is always a safety issue. First of all, you have to find a safe space to sleep at. Secondly, your sleep is never a real comfortable sleep because you don't know what's going on around you. And, we've seen incidents where people have been killed while sleeping homeless. So, for some people, it's that was the I guess for me, drinking would kind of make me less fearful. Drinking would make me eventually, feel like I need to go to sleep. But that was the medication or coping mechanism that I had to use, or that I chose to use, in order for me to kind of sleep as comfortably as I could. And on Ward's Island, in the shelter setting, the environment was so dangerous. After a few blackouts, I realized, you really can't go to sleep like that, because that deep type of sleep, you might wake up with none of your clothes on, all your stuff missing, or whatever the case is. So, that kind of offsets your biological clock, or your internal clock. And then the policies, just the way that they do things, whether I was these are things that I had to advocate against or advocate for, in terms of in the congregate setting, was if you had security walking around doing their checks, to what extent they did their checks. Are you coming near my bed, which automatically triggers me and the trauma. So I told them, don't come too close to me or whatever, don't try to creep up, because I might react in a way that might not be good for you. So there's those invasions of that personal space could kind of like prohibit you from getting a good night's sleep, which automatically would make you less productive during the day. Even in the hotel, we had issues, and there was no real concept. Nobody really considered the negative impact. And I spoke to these things. No one considered the negative impact that like 12 wellness checks would do for a person. In some places you have to eat at a certain time. So just when you get in your sleep, you have to wake up. Otherwise, you're not going to eat, and it was just those things to this day. And now that I'm in my own apartment for a couple of months, just realistically, and this is not just what happened, I'm tied in, but it's also the trauma that you live with through the homeless experience. So I'm in my apartment and there's a whole adjustment period that I'm not prepared for. And I'm like, damn, I can't sleep. Every noise, I'm thinking it's a wellness check or somebody coming close to me. I'm in my own apartment. So there's something, it takes a minute to get adjusted because I'm so used to either being on a train, being in the streets, being in these congregate settings and stuff. So now I'm uncomfortable by myself. And just when I started to get comfortable, my experience was, of course, these fake plumbers coming to my door. So now suffice it to say, I never get a good night's sleep. Like I'm constantly, hearing noise, looking at, the apartment, making sure nobody's coming in. But I'm speaking to the trauma of the experience of homelessness and how inhumane the treatment of people experiencing homelessness is, and how from the medical standpoint, it's not even addressed. Because if I speak about this, the thing that I'm being told is, that's just anxiety, just turn on some soft music or this and that. And no one's making the connection that this guy is not getting good sleep. He might not be eating properly. And obviously he's dealing with some type of PTSD that hasn't been treated, which can manifest itself into other behavior and other activities and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm speaking to my experience, but I'm almost willing to bet anything that this is the experience shared by so many other people. And while you may not get plumbers at your door, you may have HRA calling you after 2 weeks saying, hey, look, you got to sign up for We Care because I know you just got your apartment, but you'll get your services cut off if you don't show up to We Care because we want to get you a job. And you're like, I haven't even had time to adjust to being in my apartment. And so, their trauma may come from something else, but those things do exist. And without continued mental treatment for mental health issues, without proper diagnosis, without a triage approach, we could be left out here. And despite having the key to my own apartment, without additional supportive services, it could be bad.
Thank you so much, Shams. And for some people here aren't from New York. So for those of you that don't know, the plumbers at the door is a thing that happened that you can read about in the paper that happened to Homeless Hero. Let's move on to a question from Ben, another of our town hall participants today.
Hi, how's it going? So my name is Ben Ogadegbe. I'm a second-year medical student at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine, and I'm working with Dr. Doran this summer. So my question is, as medical students, we learn how to conduct a medical interview as well as take a social history to get the best picture of your current health and social situation to help with treatment. What are some questions that you've been asked that were inappropriate that we should avoid? Or what are some questions that you wish healthcare providers would ask that they typically don't in these situations?
Anyone can chime in.
One of the questions I was asked, and I really hate answering it. I come from a multiracial family, and I am not Hispanic at all. I hate being asked questions about my ethnicity over and over and over again. Those questions are not required by law. If I answer them once and they're on my paperwork, do not ask them again. Do not keep asking, oh, but you look Puerto Rican, you look Dominican. Are you sure you're not? I'm very sure I'm not. I am very sure, even though I went through foster care, even though I'm in a shelter, I'm very sure what I am. Do not ask me that. Do not ask me, oh, well, your kids all have different last names. Do you know all their fathers? That's none of your business. But just so you know, yes, I do. Do not stereotype me. Anything and everything that sounds like it may be a stereotype, do not ask it. If it is not required by law, do not ask it. If it's not required by law and you feel like it's going to make you uncomfortable, do not ask it. Especially if you're dealing with a domestic violence situation. If it is a domestic violence situation and a woman does not want to give you her address and all she tells you is, I live in a shelter, don't ask her address. There are men in domestic violence shelters too. Don't ask their address. You are asking them to violate their safety. Please stop asking people in shelters to answer uncomfortable questions that legally they do not have to answer. And then saying, oh, well, you live in a shelter, we're only trying to help. Oh, you're homeless, we're only trying to help. No, you're not helping us. You want to help us? Guess what? Shelters don't tell us that we can get social workers at hospitals. Offer us a social worker. That's all I got to say on that.
I'd like to just make a brief comment in regards to medical questions, because I know there's another question on here, I believe, about social workers, so I want to keep it to the medical point. I often disclose that I am dual diagnosed. I'm both in recovery from active addiction. I also live with mental health diagnosis. One thing about the hospital situation, if you've ever overdosed, you're a red flag when you come into a hospital. On top of the fact that before they ask you what's wrong, they run your address and they'll know if you live in a shelter. So anytime I come to a hospital, whether I'm having a panic attack or whatever it is the issue, as soon as I get there, they say, Miss, we're not giving you drugs. And I'm like, I'm not here for that. I'm having chest pains. Again, you're in pain. We're not giving you drugs. No, I'm not here for drugs. I want you to check my heart rate. I go into tachycardia, things of that nature. This is what I'm here for. So it's not so much as a question as them outright telling me. And then if I am having a panic attack, they reserve the right to not treat me. The only treatment for that is a benzodiazepine. And even though I'm currently in recovery from active addiction, not that it would make a difference. However, they reserve the right not to treat former and current addicts. So basically, those are the experiences that I've had with the medical component of it. Assumptions made. Basically, my only comment would be that not to make any assumptions on a person's character based on their address. That would be my comment. Thank you.
Sarah, Sharmal or Shams, do you want to chime in on this question about what are some things you've been asked that you wish hadn't been asked, or things that you wish that healthcare providers did ask to kind of know more about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm usually okay with the question and, and stuff like that sometimes. When I was dealing with high blood pressure, I was in the hospital. I was street homeless. I was in the hospital almost every other week. And I didn't correlate my drinking to actually making that worse. And I never saw the connection until, doctors through their question was able to say, like, hey man, the drinking is what's messing you up. And once I was able to understand that, I didn't initially go get help. once they brought the pressure down and I felt better, I went and got another drink. But I'm not as bad with the questioning as I knew that was gonna happen. Jesus, sorry. I wasn't as bad with the question as opposed to just kind of like not getting the right diagnosis or you know, or having to choose between, do you want us to treat you for the drinking or for the blood pressure? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm just in pain, I don't feel good, you know, but so I kind of was like coming into, you know, like an ER and stuff like that. I think for me, coming straight off the street, I didn't have a problem with them knowing I was homeless, but I just think that sometimes when that happens, depending on which hospitals, like I had to learn the hospitals where I would get treated and get treated properly. Because some of them were like, you're probably in here just because you want to rest up tonight. And that wasn't the case, you know. And your treatment is different. If you're homeless, you know, if you don't have proper insurance, sometimes that become a deciding factor on how you're treated. And just psychologically, when you're going through that, you're like, I could die in this place, and you know, they wouldn't treat me right. So there becomes a fear as to, should I go to the hospital? Should I not? You know, am I that sick? And you know, and I think that could negatively impact how you even seek help and stuff. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, I think that's a great answer to that question. Thanks, Shams. Charmel, do you have anything to add to this question?
I could say from my own experience, what I didn't like when I was explaining to my personal physician, not the emergency, my personal physician, telling about the anxiety, the treatment, the food, all the other particulars. What I didn't really care for, I'm not a person that takes a lot of medication, really any medication, not even really aspirin, but the next thing was, oh, you might need to talk to somebody. Then I go across the hall, talk to the psychiatrist, but the first thing they want to do is say, well, take these pills, calm your anxiety down. A month later, I go back. She asked me, how was the pills? I said, oh, they were good. I didn't take not one. She said, well, you know what? We can up the dosage. I didn't even take the first set of pills. So how are you going to up the dosage? So it has to be some type of conversation in between the physician and the psychologist before everybody want to start forcing medication down people's throats. And that's all I have to say.
Let's move on to our last town hall question, and then we'll move to the audience Q&A. So the last town hall question is from Kim.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much to the panelists for this candid, wonderful discussion today. My name is Kim Moore. I am one of the members of the Bronx Health and Housing Consortium, and I'm just so excited to be a part of this panel. I just had a quick question for you. In reflection to your experiences, to the panelists, in your reflection to your experiences in the healthcare system of services, have you received help from social workers at all? And if so, would you mind speaking to what that experience has been, and or if you had any recommendations for how those services could be enhanced?
Hi, guys. Okay, so my name is Sarah. Again, I think this is an excellent question, so I'm just going to jump right in. As I stated earlier, I am dually diagnosed, and when you meet with your social worker at the shelter, they do for your housing package a psychosocial. Now, as far as their qualifications, when I went in to do the psychosocial, there was a full room of staff eating their lunch. And I said, listen, I don't really feel comfortable discussing all my personal traumas, diagnoses, past treatment facilities, being assaulted in a room full of people snacking like it's popcorn and I'm the movie. And they said if I wasn't willing to do that, then I wasn't willing to get my housing paperwork started. So I did, and for months after that, anytime I walked down the hall, they'd be snickering or talking about whatever traumas I shared, be it family, be it personal, educational, legal, housing, whatever it is. So the social workers inside the shelter itself have been atrocious, to say the least. Outside the shelter system, as the other woman said, in the hospitals, they've never told us or told me that I was eligible for a social worker staff. Only time I did meet with someone was one time while I was inpatient, and I had asked them to help me with the documents for my housing application, the TB, the psych eval, and they told me to go back to my shelter and have them do it as well. So I feel like if anything they could help with, possibly, maybe being more helpful with the paperwork for the vouchers, and also to possibly be retrained in how to tactfully ask certain questions. I've done a lot of therapy in my life. I've had therapists tell us, we're not supposed to open you up unless we close you back up. I'm not supposed to trigger all your traumas, make you raw, make you vulnerable, and then throw you out in the street to, do whatever you do. And then also one last part, these people only work in the shelters from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., but those are the hours that we're thrown out the building. We're allowed back in when they leave for the day. And the only staff around then is cops, not counselors, and maybe a few maintenance. So another suggestion would be to have social workers in the shelters on nights and weekends to be able to treat the residents for the times that they're actually in the building, or rather locked in those buildings. If we can't do away with it entirely for now, let's at least get the people in there that need to be there so people can stop being re-traumatized and re-abused. And I'll let somebody else jump in. Thank you so much. I love that question.
Can I say something? And maybe for clarity's sake, if somebody needs to jump in to kind of give me some clarity, but I've never ever experienced a social worker in a shelter. Usually it's the RA, the security, and case managers, and I know there are some facilities that may have a medical person or I believe a medical person, but for the most part, those are my only interactions have been with those entities, and I've never really been in shelters where there's been services on site. So I know they have different type of shelters, like a MICA shelter or residential treatment facility, which is different, and the staff might be different. But I think in the shelters I've been in, from Wards Island to Project Renew's Kenton Hall, their primary staff consist of that interact with us consist of more so security who populate the facility, residential aides, the second most popular staff, of course, your maintenance and your case managers. And so that's one of the things that I'm pushing to change. My objective is to have a real social worker, someone who has training in dealing with people that deal with mental illness and substance use disorder, among other things, even peer specialists. None of them, like RAs and case managers, are not trained in these things. So a lot of times, all they're doing is asking the questions and then putting them in computers. But when you're dealing with someone that's dealing with a lot of trauma, and just the experience of being homeless is traumatic, they don't know how to apply the sensitivity, even in conversation or interactions. They don't know how to address those issues when maybe you're having an off day, maybe a relative died of COVID and it's sending you down off the edge. Maybe you're contemplating suicide. They have absolutely no knowledge about how to deal with those issues. And so a lot of us are in these environments where we're not being properly helped. And so, like, for some, the coping mechanism is the substance. For others, it is death. For others, it is, I'm angry, I'm lashing out at people, and so this gets misrepresented in the press and other things as being, this guy's a criminal. We got to lock him up. But we have to ask ourselves, is there medical professionals that are in these facilities on site? And as Sarah was saying, like, even in the context of what happens after 5 p.m., what happens on the weekends, if it's just a 9 to 5 situation, we come in at 5. And when we come in, there's no one for us to see. You were there all day, case manager, and I wasn't there because I'm thrown in the streets. Now, when I come back, I'm greeted by security that looks at me like I'm a criminal or less than, or I'm greeted by RAs who are just hiding behind a booth. And so there's no type of human interaction there. And those of us that are in this hostile environment, we have to put on our defense mechanisms and basically, act in a way towards each other that's not humane or holistic. Or sometimes we have to form our own community to protect each other and stuff like that.
Thanks, Shams. I want to be able to get to some of the audience questions because we do have such a large audience here. So I'm going to move on actually to a question related to that. So one of the audience members said, many patients they see in the emergency department who are homeless tell her that they don't feel seen or heard when they come to emergency departments. They feel judged or dismissed. So this questioner was wondering, as an emergency doctor, and this really could apply to any healthcare professional, really, what can I do differently?
I was just talking about that with one of my friends that works at prescription homes. And we were talking about that when they asked me to do this panel. And I was like, for healthcare workers, yes, like I want them to know, like, let them know, like, you guys, us, we're out here. Every one of us wants people to be more aware that homeless individuals, we're still human. That is what we're out here fighting for first and foremost. Before you can give us any services, we want you guys to understand we're human. Treat us like humans. Treat us like you would any other patient. Take the homeless part out of it.
That was such a good answer.
Give the Hippocratic oath, like, apply that to us.
Yeah. That was such a good answer that I want to leave it at that. That was like the perfect answer. Thank you, Shamea.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to another question because I think that was just spot on. So another question that the audience asked is specifically, this one is for women and mothers. So what do you think the healthcare team could do to best support women, especially mothers who are living unhoused? So any women or mothers? Sorry, Shams.
Well, before you answer that, just keep in mind that I was a single parent in the shelter system. I raised him from junior high school, the entire junior high school, to the entire high school. So I kind of know a little something about raising a child.
Well, good. Okay, chime in. Actually, the question wasn't as inclusive as it should have been, but
yeah, and I was about to file some paperwork for discrimination.
Single parents unite.
So what do you all think that the healthcare system could do better?
Well, I will say this, my experience and for the healthcare aspect of it, I really went through tons of trauma as a single parent, I guess in the late 90s, I think was my experience in the early 2000s rather. And they were really they basically took so much, they never really acknowledged that I was taking care of my child. So our access to healthcare was so limited, even while I was in the shelter system. And the trauma has not, that has been on my son, has not been addressed yet. He had a tooth that came out. And when I said, hey, you got to go to the dentist to take it, be careful because, you don't want it. And he screamed at me, which he's a very respectful child, but he screamed at me because he said, well, maybe if you would have took me to the dentist when I was younger, but we were in the shelter and I still couldn't access Medicaid because I went through a whole thing of them not acknowledging that he was with me. So, I mean, from a man's perspective, there were not a lot of things set up for me that I was able to access healthcare for both my son and myself.
I went through it a little bit after you. I went through it in the early 2000s till a few years ago. My youngest is 9, my oldest is 14. The only thing I could say, there's pros and cons when it comes to having children in the shelter system now, dealing with the medical professionals. I appreciate when I had all 4 of my children getting care packages to go home with from the hospital. The diapers, the formula definitely came in handy. I would say more teaching on what to do with our kids. Kids do not come with instruction books, ladies and gentlemen. We do not know what we're doing. Everything from not how to change a baby, but how to prepare the formula, all the way up to what to do when it comes to potty training. I have 3 sons. I did not know how to potty train a boy. Telling me, oh, you're in a shelter, have one of your neighbors help you? I don't know my neighbors. I don't feel safe with them. Help me out. Give me a website. That would have helped a lot. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. So we are almost running out of time.
Sorry, I just want to jump in real quick with one sentence and then I'll shut
Yes.
up. As far as the policies of the shelter that are completely against family, for example, visits. I was in a shelter in the Bronx. My child was in Brooklyn. For me to go to his basketball game in Flatbush Avenue, I had to take 2 trains and 2 buses, and it was about a 3-hour commute ride. His game ended at 9 p.m., but I had a 10 p.m. curfew. They would not extend it for any reason, so I had to sleep in the street because I wanted to watch my son play basketball. When it comes to overriding these policies, the only person I know they will listen to is medical professionals. I had a woman the day before crying to me because she's trying to decide between making her son go stay with her father or bringing him into a shelter. And the way that it splits up families, the way that it divides families, there is nothing in the shelter system that is beneficial to a child or to a family, and being stuck in there for years on end to break down, it's not positive. So if they can possibly speak to some of the powers that would be and explain that aspect of it, that might be a way that we can get help for our families. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, most importantly,
Mhm.
well, one of the most important things that y'all ain't cover that is real simple: food, basic nutrients, basic food. We talk about human, we are not being served properly. And so Sarah said something that's important. All of you medical professionals really need to connect with providers and give them the real stats on the negative impacts of the mental trauma that can come from being in a congregate setting, the mental trauma that can come from being fed worse than what animals would be fed, and all of that. So a good synergy between medical professionals and how the shelter runs itself, even from environmental perspective, those things are good. So I would like to see you all more active in that, more of a partnership between you all and the city in shaping policy in such a way that it respects the humanity and dignity of homeless New Yorkers. Sorry, I had to get that in.
Thank you.
And also help train the staff.
Thank you. So I want to remind everybody to do the poll that popped up on your screen. And we are at time, but I'm getting some signal that we might be okay to do one last question. So I'm going to do one really quick one that will just go real fast, rapid fire. Each person, just please, one of the questions from the audience essentially was, what do you wish, they have a lot of new trainees, new healthcare trainees, med students, nurses. What do you wish that these new people just learning how to be healthcare workers would know? So just literally one sentence each of you, and we'll wrap it up with that. Anyone can start. You. What was that?
I could be you.
Don't assume anything about a person's character based on their address or diagnosis.
I would like to say quickly, I would like for the physicians and the young people that's coming up into being new doctors and nurses, look up the business of homelessness, because homeless people always get the stereotype. You should have been out the shelter for years. It's a business. So if anybody have opportunity, look up the business of homelessness. I'm an author of it. And it's just a business. So at the end of the day, we're fighting to do all of this, but it's really a business. It's not about people. It's about money.
Let me say one last, can I go? All right, so really, hey, why don't y'all come and spend a few nights in the streets with us? Spend a few nights in the shelter with us. Go through the process with us. And there is nothing like that experience. We can talk all day, but you will never understand it until you actually live it. So if you're a student, this is a good way to do an internship. Hang out with us one day and stand on the soup kitchen line waiting for food. Go to Bellevue or to Franklin Avenue and let's go into one of these shelters and spend the night on Ward's Island. And you'll get a lesson that none of the stuff that we're talking about could even prepare you for.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Just
we
real
have more
quick,
time.
also, if they were actually able to get inside the shelters, that would be of important significance. They say that they can't allow anyone to come in and check up on us for confidentiality reasons, but HIPAA would override that. So that would be something that would be wonderful if they can get them into the actual shelter systems and part of the policy making.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you, everybody. This has been amazing. I'm sad that we don't have more time, but we can keep the conversation going. Everybody can keep this conversation going on Twitter with the hashtag #HomelessTeachIn, and I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I just really want to thank all of our remarkable panelists. We've been texting in the background just about how amazing and incredible all of you are. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, sharing of yourselves for the benefit of this audience. And I really hope that this has impacted those of you who are listening in and has transformed the way that you approach your work. And we hope to do another event like this. It seems like there's a lot of interest in that. So thank you to our panelists, thank you to our co-sponsors, and I hope everyone stays healthy and well. Bye-bye.
God bless everyone. Thank you so much. And I look forward to doing these on a regular basis. Just putting that out there. I know it's already been discussed. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
everyone.
Sarah. Thank you, Shamaya, Charmel, and Shams. Oh, awesome.
Thank you.
And great job, everyone. I'm just going to say that too.
Yes, great job.